Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
I got my bags packed and on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo.
Amateur Traveler, episode 565. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about plazas and palaces, parks, flamenco, and tapas as we go to Madrid in Spain.
I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen, and let's talk about Madrid. I'd like to welcome to the show James Blick and Yolanda Martin. James is from devourtours.com, a co-founder there, and Yolanda is from theflamencoguide.com, and they have both come to talk to us about Madrid, Spain. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having us.
Great to be here, Chris.
And we have done a show, I should say, to people on Madrid before. I think it was a decade ago. I don't remember if I told you, James, how long ago it was, but it's been quite a while ago, and I suspect some things may have changed in Madrid in the meantime.
Some things have changed and some things never change.
Exactly. Why should someone think about going to Madrid of all the places in the world to go?
It's a really good question. Often I say to people I meet or guests on our tours, I say, Madrid has no Eiffel Tower. And kind of what I mean by that is that a lot of people struggle to know why they should visit Madrid because they feel like it lacks that one central thing that they can gravitate around or think about, whether it's the Eiffel Tower or the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. So I think what is so fascinating about Madrid is once you arrive, Hemingway called it the most Spanish city, and it really is a city that pulls in culture and cuisine from all around the country. It's a melting pot. And so you get this wonderful flavor of the entire country in one place. And it's just so easy to have, such an authentic experience here, partly because compared to other parts of Spain, it struggled a little more to capture visitors a little bit. So you can roll into that bar and they'll talk to you in Spanish and won't speak English, and you can be surrounded by locals, I think, much more easily and strangely for such a big city in a really tourist-focused destination. I don't know if, Yolanda, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I also think that it combines very nicely the traditional and the modern in terms of art and also in terms of, architecture. And also, you can go to very modern neighborhoods and explore modern buildings and then go to your traditional neighborhoods like lavapiés or huertas where, there's like a tradition of literature. And so it really kind of explore those kind of different personalities within the city. And also, as James said, the great food that you can enjoy, Spain is the capital. So there's so much great food. The huge seafood culture that we have here in this landlocked capital city that, doesn't really make sense. And it's wonderful how we can enjoy wonderful prawns and octopus and it's great and of course wonderful flamenco as well.
Well, I would have been disappointed if you hadn't brought that up, so
of course
it would not be true to your brand.
So what happens is that flamenco does not come from Madrid. It does come from the south, from Andalusia.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a great tradition of flamenco in Madrid. And also as a flamenco performer, if you want to become famous and really make a living out of it, you end up moving to Madrid. This is where some of the best venues in the country are, and also some of the best teachers as well, best schools, also best guitar makers. I mean, there is a huge flamenco industry in Madrid, so that's very enjoyable, obviously, for me and also for visitors.
Okay. And what kind of things would you recommend? What itinerary would you recommend for, say, a 1-week trip to Madrid and the region?
One of the things with Madrid is when people visit and they try and organize their thoughts around it, there's the big ticket items, shall we say, the famous art museums, the Prado, the Thyssen, the Reina Sofia. And I almost empathize with people who come to visit Madrid who aren't necessarily hugely into art and they feel an obligation to visit them. I've been with my parents on European trips when I was younger, and it's like you get church and art museum fatigue. And so I do empathize because there's a lot of things that you feel you should do in a place. And what I would say to that is you really have to be mindful in the way you visit those places and try and be there for just maybe a couple of hours. If you're not that enamored with art, because it's only just such a small experience here, I would say with best experiences I've had in art museums are on organized experiences, tours that they offer in those museums and things like that, because really then you can get the story of the pictures and not just feel overwhelmed by thousands of works, or go in and focus on particular artists, whether it's Goya in the Prado, Velázquez in the Prado, or maybe Picasso in the Reina Sofia. So I would say do visit those, but don't feel overwhelmed by those.
And no need to do the three of them either. You choose.
Yeah, Prado being art from the 12th century up until the early 20th century, based what was the Spanish royal collection, and the Reina Sofia being contemporary art. So if you prefer one or the other, we'll just go for that, and don't feel bad if you don't see the other one. And the Thyssen kind of fills a lot of the gaps in the middle.
And both of those, as I recall, are in the walking distance of downtown. Do I have them in the right spot?
Exactly. I mean, they're all three are in what they call the triangle of art, which is a strange thing because it's not a triangle. Welcome to Spain. And so they're all within walking distance. And, the downtown area or the old center of Madrid is so walkable. It's tiny.
And you talk about the walkable downtown area. Why don't we put a couple landmarks on the map for people right away? So it seems like there are sort of two main points I think of when I think of the old city, the Plaza del Sol and as I say plaza here, I may not be saying it in the correct Castilian Spanish way here because I have Mexican Spanish in my head, and the Plaza de Mayor.
Yeah, the Puerta del Sol, la Plaza del
Sol. Thank you.
Which is where all roads come from. It's the local square, the heart of the city, and the Plaza Mayor, which is nearby, which is what I like to think is the main historic square, big regal square that was built when Madrid became the capital in the 16th century. And those are very central. But as you go out from that, there are many neighborhoods surrounding those, which for someone who's spending a week here, I think a nice way to organize your experience in Madrid is by neighborhoods. I mean, Malasaña,
yeah. Like I would also add the Gran Via as a kind of a landmark. So Gran Via and north of Gran Via, so that other neighborhood that James was mentioning, Malasaña.
Gran Via as a landmark, and I don't know what we're talking about.
Gran Via is a street, a main boulevard that cuts through the city, dividing the north and south of the old center. Yeah, and so Malasaña is a neighborhood that is the Puerta del Sol and the Plaza Mayor are south of Gran Via. And that's really where the main historic tourist center is. If you cross north from there, you come into Malasaña, which is, again, a beautiful historic neighborhood, but that's where you will see more of the daily life. There's shops, there's a great nightlife. You'll be able to get away and have a more local experience, should we say. And so I think, Malasaña is that neighborhood. There's Chueca also alongside, a lot of great food there. Chueca's the gay neighborhood.
So it's about to have a huge party now in World Pride.
The World Pride is coming. Yeah.
When is that held then? We're recording this in middle of June, and that party is in?
It's July, end of June to the beginning of July, 23rd of June to the early July. It's a week long. Yeah, a huge party. That's going to be a big deal with a lot of people coming into the city. I think that's something that's important about Madrid is that, as its identity, a lot of people think of, Barcelona, the fun-loving kind of Mediterranean city, and Madrid, the more pinned down, buttoned up Castilian city. But it's not. Madrid, as I'm told, I'm not a big guy who goes out to clubs or anything like that, but I'm told that Madrid is the best place to go clubbing in Spain. It's a city that is the seat of the government and things like that, but it has a wonderful energy through it. This is where in the 1980s there was the Movida Madrileña, where after Franco, the dictator, died in the mid-70s, the country opened up in democracy. It was in Madrid where the country really let loose. And, great art came out of that, wonderful music. So it's a city that has a very strong identity as a vibrant, lively city, which I think people don't necessarily expect of Madrid.
Okay.
And I think in neighborhoods like Malasaña, you will see that.
And let's get a little more detailed here. Bring us back here to the center. In fact, we can get from the airport where we probably flew in down to the Puerta del Sol on the subway, as I recall. And so we're kind of starting there. And then where would you take us first? What's our first stop?
First stop, I would walk around that key central area. I would walk around the Puerta del Sol, the Plaza Mayor, Madrid de los Austrias, where the palace is. This is the oldest part of Madrid where the royal palace is. This is really the heart of historic Madrid, and I think it's a good area to explore.
Okay. And what am I looking for, or what am I going to do in those three places? So I'm in Puerta del Sol, and then anything I'm particularly looking for while I'm there or going to stop and go into?
In the Puerta del Sol, what you're going to be looking for is it's a square where you must stop at the Mallorquina, which is the most famous pastry shop and bakery in the city. And that is where you're going to have a Napolitana de chocolate, which is one of the most delicious chocolate pastries, like a pain au chocolat, the French pastry, but Madrid style. You're going to go into that place and you're going to try one of those. Be ready for a very Madrid experience, which is when you go into a tapas bar, when you go into a shop, when you go into or an eating place, often in the traditional places in Madrid, it's very rough and tumble. And this is a little bit different, say, from Barcelona, for example, where things sometimes feel a little bit more Northern European. There's going to be old women pushing you out of the way to get to there. This is the beauty of Madrid. It's kind of a gruff city in some ways. It's like a fast-flowing river, and you'll drown at the beginning, but if you can get your head above water, then it will be an exhilarating experience.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kindness as well, I must say, as a Spaniard here.
Yeah.
But we, once you get, yes, it might feel a bit rough sometimes, but we also have, an ease of just talking to people, like in a very spontaneous manner. You're at a bar and it's totally fine to just end up talking to the people in the table next to you. That happens all the time, it's, and you might end up, in just drinking with them, like the whole night through, it's just a very kind of a fluid way of relating to each other.
Okay, excellent. Now, of course, you've got me at the bar at night and I just get off the train. So let's figure out what I'm doing between now and then. So I'm going in to get my pastry. I'm watching my elbows a little bit to get my place in line.
Exactly. So you're going to do that. You're going to get that to take away, and then you're going to wander down the Calle Mayor, the main street. You're going to hang a left into the Plaza Mayor, the regal square. What you're going to make sure you don't do in the Plaza Mayor is sit down at any table around the outside, because unfortunately there is maybe one or two places that might be okay, but most of them are tourist traps.
Which is a shame because it's a gorgeous place.
It is a shame. And I sometimes wonder whether, this happens in tourist destinations, European cities. Mm-hmm. Often these iconic squares fall victim to average overpriced food. And I don't know whether the city council should do something or whether they just have to leave it to market forces and that's the only way to do it. But it is a shame, because I would like to sit there and have a good meal.
So this isn't like if I'm in some smaller city in Spain, like Girona or whatever, I'm going to find the locals in the square. I'm going to find the tourists here. The locals have gone elsewhere.
The locals have gone elsewhere. Nearby.
Okay. All right.
Plenty of locals in Puerta del Sol. Always is where everything happens, really. It's really our Plaza Mayor. It's our main square, Puerta del Sol. It's where for me in Madrid, always lead to Puerta del Sol.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, the mile marker 0 is right there in Puerta del Sol. So it literally is where everything is measured from in Spain. So that makes sense.
Exactly. All the streets are measured from there. All the highways throughout the country are measured from there. Of course, and just to go back to the Puerta del Sol, there is the famous statue of the bear, which is where if you're ever lost in Madrid, that's a good place to tell your friends you'll meet again. A lot of people meet by the bear. They actually it's a statue of a bear, which is the traditional symbol of Madrid. There's no bears in Madrid, no bears in the mountains, but it's a bear leaning on a madroño tree, which they call a strawberry tree, which is not true because, as we know, strawberries
don't grow on trees. Yeah.
Puerta del Sol is not as aesthetically, I mean, it's beautiful for me, but a lot of people, when you think of a traditional grand square, that's the Plaza Mayor, the one alongside.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think once you're there, what is important to remember is the locals, they do go to the Plaza Mayor. That's where concerts are held in the summer. It's where the Christmas is winter, but they don't eat there unless they're going to eat a calamari sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a very famous place called La Campana, which is just off the Plaza Mayor, where Madrid's most famous street food, which is a fried calamari sandwich. Where you can get them all around the square, but that's the place to go for it.
I don't remember seeing a calamari sandwich there. This is a normal closed-faced sandwich, fried calamari.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It sounds like we're making it up. I know, because it's a landlocked. Trust me, we're not making it up, Chris. Madrid's one street food it's the most traditional thing is a calamari sandwich, which obviously Yolanda has eaten a lot more of these in her life than I have. So I'll hand it over to her briefly.
Yeah, basically it's your baguette bread, and then you put your calamari that have been deep fried, and it's delicious. I mean, sometimes it might feel a bit dry, so ideally what you do is you put a little bit of alioli or some mayonnaise.
Okay.
Just to pass it through. It's a wonderful thing, really, so Spaniards or Madrileños, we go to Plaza Mayor, but if we're there, what we're going to do actually is just have our calamari sandwich and, maybe sit on the ground, actually, of Plaza Mayor. And it's actually something that we cherish quite a lot, our, calamari sandwich.
Because you have to think that Madrid has the second largest fish market in the world after Tokyo. So this is a city where you can eat wonderful fish despite the fact we're landlocked. It's a Catholic country, so in the capital of a Catholic country, you needed to get a lot of fish in there for Fridays and other religious holidays when you couldn't eat meat. So, do try a calamari sandwich. And then, just to step out of the Plaza Mayor, there's a place that a lot of people visit, and it's on, the top 10 list, rightly so in a lot of ways, and that's the Mercado San Miguel, or the St. Michael Market, which is an early 20th century cast iron building, beautiful building that was a traditional market that started to struggle in the 80s, 90s, and was turned into what is now kind of a place for tapas, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you have to use that word market a little loosely.
Yeah, because it's not really a market where you go and buy your products.
Okay.
To cook at home.
But it is a wonderful place to eat food. The products there are very, very good. And as I say, although some locals do avoid it on Friday nights when it gets very, very busy, a lot of Madrileños, a lot of people from the city do go there. But maybe something we'll talk about a little later is that, markets are wonderful in Madrid, but people should know that one is not a traditional one. It's a wonderful place to visit, but there are other markets which are traditional markets, as I like to say, where my mother-in-law goes. My mother-in-law does not go to Mercado San Miguel. And then you can keep wandering down towards the palace, although there's a hidden convent in a street which is called Calle del Codo, C-O-D-O, or Codo Street, Elbow Street, where the nuns bake cookies.
Oh, okay.
Knock on the door and go through a secret passage, and you have to buy them over a turnstile because they're cloistered and you can't have.
I've done this in Ronda, but I have not done this in Madrid. So you're putting your money on the turnstile and it's coming back around with cookies?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Changing your cookies. And they're good. Get the almond ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
The lemon ones are
The lemon ones are good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you keep heading, you can wind round towards the Royal Palace and the cathedral, which you're sort of doing a ring in a sense of the old. The Royal Palace is not one of my favorite things to visit in Madrid. I think some people love it. It doesn't feel very Spanish in a lot of ways. You know, they're very beautiful rooms, the blue room, the red room, and there's some wonderful art. But again, I think that's a place that can be hard to experience on your own without some sort of guided experience. And someone telling you, or a really good guidebook that gives you some rich information about what you're seeing.
Well, and we should tell people all of this distance you've taken us so far, we've walked less than half a mile. So we're in the very small, compact city center at this point.
Yeah, very, very small. You know, the center of Madrid is tiny and it's active. You know, it's a very busy area. If you keep going, you'll come around. Almost you can come back round to the Puerta del Sol again. You sort of do a ring. Mm-hmm. And then if you keep heading, say, south from the Puerta del Sol, then you hit La Latina, which is a very famous neighborhood. And as I say, when I say head south, we're not walking for miles. We're walking about 3 minutes. Mm. And you're in a place where there's famous tapas bars. What's your favorite one down there? The Andalusian one?
The Andalusian one I love. It's called Taberna Sanlúcar. And so it's after this village in the south of Spain called Sanlúcar de Barrameda. So Taberna Sanlúcar. And they specialize in food from the south. So, which I love. My love for flamenco, of course, it's also, supported by my love for everything Andalusian, and the food and sherry wine.
And so you said this was based on a village by Cadiz?
Yes. So it's called Sanlúcar de Barrameda. That's the name of the village. Okay. And that's where the river Guadalquivir gives to the sea. And so the place is called Taberna Sanlúcar.
Okay.
It's like stepping in Andalusia, in the middle of Madrid.
And it's a little hidden, there's a very famous street called Calle Cava Baja in La Latina, which is lined with tapas bars, and there's wonderful tapas bars in there. There's a couple of tourist traps along there, but it's a pretty good quality, but then this Sanlúcar place is a little more hidden down near the church called San Francisco el Grande, which is another wonderful church to visit. Again, which when you walk in, even if you have church fatigue, this one's probably worth it. And there's a Goya painting in there. So if you're a Goya fan.
I am a Goya fan, so that would be interesting.
Well, there you go. Well, if you're a Goya fan and you did want to walk about 10 minutes, you can go to San Antonio de la Florida, which is a chapel, which is, again, from the Royal Palace where we were moments ago, about a 10, 15-minute walk is where Goya is buried.
Oh,
and it's where he paints wonderful frescoes on the ceiling, buried without his head. His head went missing in the 19th century. So.
Well, that seems rather careless, but...
Exactly.
Well, and you mentioned tapas about 3 times, and I even question whether in 2017 I need to explain to people what tapas is, because it seems so prevalent to me now outside of Spain. But let's assume that there's somebody who is someplace that hasn't had tapas. When you talk about a tapas bar, you're talking about a bar that has little tiny plates of food.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting in my experience guiding people around Madrid, and is that although tapas is prevalent all throughout the country and throughout the world, and people know what it is in the sense of small plates,
right,
more than they did 10, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago, people still don't understand what is the heart of a tapas experience. And for me, it's understanding that tapas in Spanish is a noun. It's those small plates that we share, or sometimes larger plates, but just the key is sharing. But that we have a verb in Spanish, which is tapear, to go for tapas. And I think for me, what is so key to help people understand is that tapas is a physical experience. It's beyond the food. It's about going to a place that's often busy, and in Madrid particularly, getting your way to the bar, ordering plates, ordering a little bit, never ordering too much at once, ordering a little something to drink, and then continue ordering there, or maybe going elsewhere and ordering something else. It's very much the physical experience of it, of sometimes bar hopping or sharing plates with friends. And I think that is what's key. And I think often you can eat tapas outside Spain, but you can't easily do tapas outside Spain. And I think that distinction is important.
Well, and traditionally, this was the thing that you did after work and that kept you not starved until dinner time, which was sometime much later. I understand that's changing a little bit in northern Spain. Is that still traditional where dinner is still 10 o'clock at night, or?
It is. We're still eating late.
Okay.
The thing with tapas, and it's kind of my little sort of pet thing, is that I think sometimes what happens, you read an article in a newspaper and they try and, in one line sum up tapas as, appetizers or this or that. Tapas is whatever you want it to be. It can be before sitting down in a restaurant for a meal. It can be your meal.
The meal.
Sure.
It's more the fact that in that moment you are sharing food with friends in a casual environment, and that, they come on small plates. In Madrid, if you order a drink, you're given a gift by the bar, which is called the tapa, but it's never anything to fill up on necessarily. And then you order what's called raciones, which are actually quite large portions. Whereas if you're in Seville, you can order tapa-sized portions, which are smaller ones. So depending on the region of Spain, the actual mechanics of tapas changes. And that's really important to know when you travel around, that you will notice regional variation.
It even changes from city to city. So, in Seville, you can order your tapa and actually pay for it. But in Granada, you will order a drink and it will come with a tapa that is actually quite big. And you can just have dinner on a couple of tapas that are free.
Well, and that was more the original tradition, right? Is that you had the little plate on top of your beer to keep the flies out, I think, more than anything else. And once you're doing that, you started with a handful of nuts on there, and then that has led to more and more, yeah.
Exactly. It's led to a whole way of eating and a whole way of thinking about the way we eat. But, when we have dinner at Yolanda's parents' house, sometimes we sit down and you have your plate of fish and you have your first course, second course, and it's your plate. But other times there'll just be a bunch of plates on the table. And in that sense, we're eating tapa style, which, I think in the States you often call family style. The key thing is when you go into a tapas bar is not rush your order and order a million plates, but just order a drink and have a look around, take your time.
See what people are eating.
See how it's working, because there's no set really rules.
My impression, too, is that the food scene in Madrid, and I feel like I'm speaking to the right person when I ask this question, is dynamic. And so there are the traditional things that I'm sure that I could have gotten, a century ago. I assume people are trying new things all the time, that there are new hot tapas or new hot tapas at this restaurant. Am I on the right track?
Yolanda's lived here all her life. I've lived here 6 years, and I've seen in the last 6 years a huge change in the availability of more modern style tapas in Madrid, in a more dynamic dining scene. There's an area on the east side of the Retiro Park, the very famous kind of what is our Central Park in a sense. And it's an area called Ibiza or Ibiza. It's a neighborhood. And that is a must visit for anybody who wants to experience some of Madrid's more modern tapas scene. And there's a number of bars, tapas bars / restaurants. You can sit down if you want, or you can stand at the bar in a very small few blocks. There's a new one called Culto, which is KULT0. You can tell by the name, it's not a traditional place. There's another place called La Castella, which is actually quite traditional, but then again, they do they do more modern twists, great combinations of things like langostinos and garbanzos, chickpeas. And there's a few areas out there. Taberna Laredo is another one. That's an area where, if you just look on, whether it's TripAdvisor or Google or whatever, you will find that you're in an area with a lot of places in a very small area around you. And they will be full of mainly locals.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have gone, just so people can orient themselves, we've gone about a mile from the downtown at this point to the east. First, we've come to the big park, the Retiro Park, and then we've gone to the neighborhood that we're talking about here.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And don't get caught in the Retiro in summer.
Please don't.
Plan accordingly.
Why am I not getting caught? You have lost me here.
I'm sure you've been to Madrid in the summer and never be anywhere bar inside at 5 p.m. in the afternoon or 4 p.m. It's just too hot.
Oh, sure. Okay.
The quicker you can get in sync with the locals, the richer experience you will have. Breakfast is light, lunch is 2-ish, 3-ish. You could be in a bar having an aperitif at about 8, 8:30, but then at 9, 9:30, 10, you're eating. You will be more likely to be surrounded with locals rather than tourists if you stick to those schedules.
You say breakfast is light. I know what my son and I were having in Madrid for breakfast, and you could probably get
Churros.
we were having churros dipped in hot chocolate. And when I say hot chocolate, I really mean pudding.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't necessarily recommend this from a dietary point of view, but, hey, we're on vacation. You mentioned summer. That really begs the question. And we were there. In fact, I think the only time I've been to Madrid was in June. And I had argued for a trip earlier in the year, but we had ended up going in June. And it was a tad warm. It gets warmer still in July and August. When do you recommend is the best time of year to see Madrid? And then when is the best day of the year to see Madrid?
I would recommend to go to Madrid in either May or September. So just avoiding really the central months of the year, the summer. July and August, it does get very hot, like 35 degrees
Celsius. One note about August. It's not a good time to come also because a lot of things are closed. Yes. A lot of great bars, tapas bars are closed for the whole month holiday.
And shops.
So you'll miss out on certain experiences if you come in August. So be aware of that.
Well, and for my American thinking audience, 35 degrees, about 95 Fahrenheit, not as warm as it will get as I go further south into, say, Andalusia, but still fairly warm.
That's true.
Definitely,
That's true.
Yeah.
No sea breezes to take the edge off.
That's true.
And the only thing I will notice from working in tourism is that because May and September are really the best months weather-wise, as Yolanda was saying, but they are very popular months.
Sure.
So prices will be a little higher. So even if you were thinking October, you might get some cheaper deals and still get some of that warmer weather.
Okay. And then best day of the year, the day when Madrid just shines.
Maybe I would say, actually, it's just gone past. So that's the day that we celebrate the patron saint of Madrid. That's San Isidro. So that's on the 15th of May. And so there's these festivities, all throughout the city, really. And there's concerts as well, a lot of outdoor things to be enjoyed. And also people go to the Pradera de San Isidro and they dress up in the traditional Madrileño manner. The men, they wear like a beret and the traditional pants and waistcoat. And women also dress, in lovely dresses with polka dots.
With polka dots, okay. I was picturing colorful, but I wasn't picturing the polka dots.
Yeah, really small polka dots. So it's not really the flamenco polka dot.
Yeah,
really small ones. And it's quite kind of flattering dress. And they also, they get together, they do a picnic in this pradera, in these fields, they traditionally, share a picnic and dance. It's a lovely day. And usually, as it happens in Madrid, it's lovely, sunny, clear blue, gorgeous skies. So, that would be one of my favorite days in Madrid.
Yeah, perfect. And that's when you will have concerts in the Plaza Mayor and that main square, for example. I'm not a bullfighting fan, but it is also, if anybody was interested in seeing that, it's when the season begins here in Madrid.
Got it.
I mean, another thing on the list, flamenco, obviously, which I know Yolanda has some good recommendations for places to go.
As I said before, Madrid is a bit like the flamenco business capital in Spain. And so in order to see flamenco, what you do is you go to a tablao. And so a tablao is a flamenco venue. So it's a venue that is just been built and dedicated to flamenco exclusively. I wouldn't recommend getting dinner there. They usually have the combo of show plus dinner. Avoid that. Their specialty is flamenco. Go and see flamenco there. And
their specialty is not the food.
No.
Dinner and a show.
Look, I mean, it won't be totally wrong. It will be fine, but no, it wouldn't be the best food that you can get in Madrid. I can recommend maybe going to, there's Casapatas. There is the Carboneras tablao, also Villarrosa.
And are these in a particular neighborhood? Where are we going to find flamenco?
They're very central. Casa Patas and Villarosa, they're really close to Puerta del Sol. And then
Okay.
Carboneras is really also nearby, actually, the San Miguel market. So very central, all of them.
Okay. And for those who are listening, who are trying to figure out where these places are, you will find links to these in the show notes. I'm assuming I found all these by the time you're listening. So
they have consistently great shows almost every night.
And if I am ignorant of flamenco, which I largely am, what should I see for my first flamenco show? Is there something specifically I should look for? Or all flamenco is good flamenco?
Well, what you're looking for, I mean, a traditional flamenco show has flamenco singing, flamenco guitar, and flamenco dancing. So the combination of those three will make a traditional flamenco show.
Got it.
What you want is to see something that feels authentic in the end.
Mm-hmm.
There are touristy shows in Madrid, and I would never recommend those. What you're looking for is to feel the authenticity, to feel that they're really having a good time. Something fantastic about flamenco is that you're looking at the people on the stage, and you feel sometimes that you're just privileged sort of witness to their fun. It's the way they have fun from when they're children. And there's also other ways to enjoy flamenco. You can go to flamenco bars. That same Casa Patas tablao that I mentioned before, a really great thing about it is that when the performers end their show, the last one, it finishes at midnight or so, they go out to the bar. There's like another area where it's like the restaurant bar, and they just hang out there. You know, they have few beers, maybe some other performers from other flamenco venues around the city go there as well. And so, you know, there's a little bit of a flamenco get together that happens spontaneously there. That's something also very nice to live. A new bar actually along Cava Baja in La Latina district. And this place is called La Taranta. Also starting to have a few flamenco get-togethers. Very informal. There's like a cave downstairs. So you just go there, you grab a glass of wine or a beer, and flamenco performers will go there in a very informal manner. You don't need to pay there. They'll be singing and playing the guitar. And I have friends that go there and sing sometimes.
Excellent.
As someone who lives here, obviously in Madrid, and has experiences a lot of flamenco with Yolanda, it was interesting. We went to this place, La Taranta, a few weeks ago, and people started singing. People came down, and people in the audience started singing flamenco while someone was playing the guitar. And there were two people, I think they were British tourists, and I don't know how they found the place. They must have stumbled in. And it was almost like they couldn't believe what they had stumbled on, as if they had walked into the most authentic. I could sort of overhear their conversation. They were just aghast. They had sort of stumbled into this authentic flamenco experience. And I think that's the beauty of Madrid, that if you can find those little corners, they really are everywhere. They're hard to find if you don't know where you're looking.
Well, and that is, of course, why we have you. I want to back up just a little bit here and get back to a bigger scope here. As we go to start to think about having to wrap this up, I want to make sure that we've covered what we want to cover. So if I'm coming to Madrid and I've got a week's vacation, how much of it am I spending in Madrid, and how much of it am I going to spend outside in your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 4 days or so in Madrid is a great to be able to visit the museums, the neighborhoods, the markets. Anton Martin market is a great market, traditional market, counterpoint to the San Miguel.
And where is that one?
That one is in the kind of between the Huertas and Lavapiés neighborhood. Lavapiés is a neighborhood that's a traditional working class neighborhood, again, near the Puerta del Sol. And it's a very vibrant neighborhood with some great food that's starting to come out of there as well. And so if you want to see, visit Jesus, my handman, or Jesus, my handman, he's there in the Anton Martin market. There's Juanjo.
So this is the local ham guy versus going to the Museo de Jamón or so, one of the big chains.
Well, the Museo de Jamón is a chain, but not in the McDonald's sense. It's a traditional chain.
Right.
They have their place. But, I think if you think about the two market experiences you can have, it's San Miguel on the one hand or Anton Martin on the other.
Okay.
And just always think, my mother-in-law goes to the Anton Martin and not San Miguel. I think in 4 days you can explore that. The Huertas literary neighborhood is wonderful as well. Day trips, the biggies are Segovia, which is a Roman town, half an hour on the fast train to the north. And it's a beautiful town, a defensive position on a hill there. I mean, like any of these towns, just to wander around and soak up the atmosphere. The architecture is wonderful. There's a Roman aqueduct that's astounding running through the main square. One of the most incredible things. I'm sure you've seen it, Chris.
Well, and we have an episode of Amateur Traveler on Segovia, I think on Segovia and Toledo.
And as I say, Segovia is, the suckling pig is the famous dish there.
Right. Roast suckling pig.
Exactly. This is a place that people visit. And I'm going to kind of move past them, Toledo, quickly, because they're the places that people often visit. Right. Because there's so much information about them. Toledo, it took a few years to kind of understand Toledo in a way because I kept visiting it on my own. About a year ago, I did a tour with a guy called Diego. He's an archaeologist. He wears the Indiana Jones hat.
Well, he must be an archaeologist.
He is, right? It's called Busy Toledo, these guys. And if you can find Diego as your guide, he speaks English. And my God, he brought that place to life. And he had secret access into various places that because of the fact that he's working on Toledo as an architect. So Toledo is a place where you can visit mosques, old synagogues, churches, with the three religions living in somewhat harmony for a period, some 100 years ago. So those are the biggies. All I would say is when you go to them, do your reading because you can get, again, stuck and sort of just end up wandering around and not quite know what you're looking at. A thing that I think is really, really interesting is to head up to the mountains to the north of Madrid. And again, we're talking, this is, by public transport, by train, maybe 30, 45 minutes. The Sierra de Guadarrama, it's called. And up there you have this thing for history fans. There's a place called the Valley of the Fallen or El Valle de los Caídos. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the most astounding things I've ever seen in my life. You can see it when you fly into Madrid. It's one of I believe, the largest cross in the world, 50 meters high. 150 meters high. It's where Francisco Franco, the dictator of Spain until the mid-70s, is buried.
Right.
This is a monument that he built to celebrate his victory in the Spanish Civil War. By the time he'd finished it in the 50s, it wasn't okay to build what was effectively a fascist shrine. And so instead of just filling it with his dead from the Spanish Civil War, those who fought on his side, he dug up those who fought against him from the Republican side and put them in there as well, under the pretense that it was a monument of reconciliation. But one side didn't consent to being buried there. And what it is a basilica that's carved into the rock, almost like something of Lord of the Rings, with massive statues of archangels with swords looking down on you. And it's worth visiting.
If the Lord of the Rings had really very traditional, artistically fascist artists, I mean, it's very much that artistic, over-the-top style interior of the thing. A very interesting place, but also just a little creepy.
Very creepy, very creepy. Very, very creepy. Memorable, creepy, interesting. It's got everything going on.
Right.
But that is connected to a place called El Escorial. So the easiest way, if you go up to El Escorial, where there is a very famous monastery / palace where Philip II, the king who made Madrid the capital in the 16th century, where he spent a lot of his time, that's a wonderful place to visit as well.
And also the headquarters of the Spanish Inquisition. So as long as we're going for creepy.
Exactly. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. It's a creepy day altogether.
Yeah. That's thematic. Again, just something for me as a food person. Madrid is its own wine region. A lot of people don't know that.
I did not know that.
There are wineries you can visit outside the city. That there are organized tours that you can take, or sometimes the easiest way to visit them is through that because there's not necessarily public transport to get to them.
Are there some tour operators you would recommend in terms of organized wine tourism there?
I think there's a company called Wine Experience. To be honest, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I do know there's a few operators that are offering them. Wine Experiences, or the Wine Bus is one. The Wine Bus is a guy. I know. It sounds dangerous, but there are some experiences you can have, wine experiences around the city.
Well, and everything we've talked about so far, you can day trip from Madrid. You could use Madrid as a home base. Now, Toledo, I might spend the night there. Segovia, I might spend the night there, but you can. I mean, it's certainly possible to day trip from here.
Yeah, very, very, very much
Especially
so.
because of the train network is splendid. So,
Scarily enough, I've met people who have done day trips to Barcelona from Madrid. So the trains are very fast. If you get an early train, you can be at Barcelona for breakfast. So, it's 2.5, how long to Cordoba? 2.5 hours?
2.5, yeah.
You could do an overnight to Andalusia from Madrid if you were willing to jump on the train.
Sure.
These are very, very quick distances just to travel from.
And pleasant.
And pleasant, yeah, wonderfully.
Great, the train.
The beauty of, often if I'm moving around the country for work, I will always take a train rather than fly, because the trick with the trains is that, I love the sign that, you can board that train until 2 minutes before it leaves.
Yes.
Very different from getting on planes. And it leaves you in the center of the city as well.
You start in the center and then you leave in the center of the city, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to start to kind of wrap this up, put a bow around it at this point here, because I think we've given some people some good ideas. People who have been to Spain but don't really know Madrid, what's going to surprise them about Madrid? Say they've been to Barcelona on a cruise or something. They think they know Spain. Madrid's going to be different because...
Whether it's going to surprise them, but they're going to be a little bit baffled at the beginning, because because Madrid lacks that. It's almost like it's hard to sum up in one line, what it's about. Barcelona has the sea, or it has Gaudí. So I think that they have to accept that and understand that when my friends come to visit me in Madrid, what do? We go out in the evening, we go to tapas bars, we soak up the atmosphere, we enjoy the fact that it's a city where you can feel like a local even if you're not. And I think, it's very hard for me to put myself in the mindset of someone who's visiting and what people expect. But I would say, don't just, think about it beyond the art. Think about it as a city that, as Yolanda was saying, is both modern and traditional, that you can have wonderful modern food, fantastic traditional food. You can explore neighborhoods that are full of great boutiques and hidden shops and things like that. So think of Madrid as more than just sort of the regal capital where you've got to just go and see the royal palace and that's it. Think of it as a city that's very livable, very walkable, and very easy to experience, actually, very friendly.
Okay. We gave James that question. So Yolanda, this one's for you. You're standing in the prettiest spot in Madrid. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
I think I am at a traditional bar, I'm afraid.
It all comes back to food in this episode. Okay. What are we looking at?
Yeah, standing by the bar, actually having a vermouth and maybe a tortilla de patata pincho, the Spanish omelette pincho. And I'm looking at people around me. They're having like a fabulous time. It's a bustling bar, so there's so many people around me. They're all probably speaking very loudly and, like Madrileños do. And I'm just, surrounded by all this liveliness that Madrid has to offer.
Yeah. I agree as well, actually. That's where I would probably be. But if you did want nature, there is a wonderful park called El Capricho, which is a little bit north on the underground, on the subway. It only opens on the weekends. And it's this wonderful little wonderland that was once the gardens of a palace and is kind of like a retiro park in miniature, full of, swans and hidden little houses and things like that. So that's a very interesting place to visit.
One place that the tourism board is going to tell me I have to go and you're going to tell me I should just skip?
If I was going to look at where the tourism board was going to say to go, I would agree with all those places, but I wouldn't agree with the angle that they give it.
Okay.
We famously lost the Olympics for the 2016. It was 2020.
Twice in a row.
We've lost them twice in a row. I'm not sure what dates, but the mayor at the time was famous for saying, Madrid is wonderful. You can have a cup of café con leche in the Plaza Mayor. And it was a real disconnect for me as somebody who works day to day in tourism and shares the city with our guests, with what actually is a real experience in Madrid. It's not to have coffee in the Plaza Mayor.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's frustrating that tourism boards, I think throughout the world sometimes, I think they're getting better throughout the world. They think tourists want something that is almost a kind of a plastic version of what the tourists want.
And what we didn't say, you started to say this earlier, is you don't sit down for your coffee in the Plaza Mayor. You go someplace close by where the locals are, which is where?
The Mallorquina.
The
Mallorquina, that place on the Puerta del Sol, or any bar.
Okay.
Any bar, the beauty of bars in Spain and, particularly Madrid's kind of Castilian personalities, any bar will serve you a cup of coffee They're open from 10 in the morning till midnight.
10 in the morning, so first thing in the morning Madrid time.
Yeah, exactly. So first thing, exactly. Right early 10 a.m. I think that for me is the key, is that often tourism boards sort of give this very superficial surface view of what an experience is, when the richer experiences, you have to scratch the surface a little more.
And I might have to use my elbows a little more, it sounds like.
And you will have to use your elbows. And that's the thing in the end. That's what people want to hear, because that's what a great experience is. So let's start talking about what real experiences are in a place, and authentic experiences, and be honest about what the locals do, because that's what I want to do when I go somewhere.
Well, I would say in terms of surprises, I knew that per capita the Spanish eat more seafood than any other country in Europe, but I didn't know they had the second largest seafood market in the world. That one surprised me, and I've been to Madrid, so I want to underline that one there.
Yes.
Exactly.
And in a landlocked capital city, which is
exactly. I mean, that's probably what will surprise people. It's a city full of juxtapositions, full of contrasts, and so look a little deeper, do your reading, find someone who can show you around or whatever it is, and really discover this amazing city that I've just fallen deeply in love with, and thanks to Yolanda.
As an adopted favorite son of Madrid here, what did you have to just learn to laugh out loud and say, it's just Madrid, that's the way things are here, that just struck you as so funny when you first got there?
You know what? It struck me as strange. And when I first came here, the bocadillos, the sandwiches that we eat are like, we come from a culture in, say, New Zealand, where a sandwich has tomato and lettuce and all these different things. And a sandwich here is like one thing. It might be 3 thin slices of chorizo or cheese, And when we used to eat sandwiches, when we lived together, Yolanda and I in New Zealand, and they would have all these different things in them, Yolanda would send photos of them to her friends and how ridiculous these sandwiches were with more than one thing in them. And I'd get here and people would eat, tortilla de patata, which is not like a Mexican tortilla. It's like the patata, but without the extra ingredients, egg, potato, salt, that in a sandwich. And I'm like, I don't want a potato sandwich. This is crazy. Now I love them.
Mm-hmm.
Quite the opposite of the Mexican torta, for instance. I remember having a Mexican sandwich with, I think there were 20 things in the sandwich.
Yeah.
I couldn't even identify everything in the sandwich. I thought it was wonderful, but a very, very different approach. Interesting. And then finally, to wrap it up, last question. If you had to summarize Madrid in 3 words, the essence of Madrid, I'll give you 3 words each. What 3 words would you use?
I say sunny.
Okay.
I say vibrant.
Okay.
And dynamic.
Okay.
I would say, if I can count rough and tumble as one word.
We'll let you hyphenate that one.
Yeah, exactly, with hyphens. I would say rough and tumble. I would say surprising.
Okay. Surprising in what way?
Surprising in a way that if you can have a rich experience here, it will be one that you don't expect. When people go to...
It's that British couple in the flamenco place.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think when people go to certain cities, they have an idea in their mind of what their experience will be that is either confirmed or not, or shattered. In Madrid, people don't really know.
Okay.
It's unexpected in that sense. And what else? I would just say invigorating. This is an invigorating city.
Excellent. Well, our guests again have been James Blick and Yolanda Martin. Where can people read more about your beloved city of Madrid or about your travels?
Well, I have this website that is theflamencoguide.com. And so I run a calendar with all things that, flamenco that are happening in Madrid. So I recommend the flamenco shows that are, my favorite in this calendar. And I also write about flamenco, flamenco guitars. I write about, flamenco bars.
And you're writing in English or Spanish?
In English.
Okay,
It's in
excellent.
English language, website. And they can also have a look at my private flamenco tours that I give in Madrid.
And do these tend to be in the evening?
In the evening, yes.
Okay, so I'm taking James' food tour in the afternoon, and I'm taking your flamenco tour at night. Is that how this works?
Exactly.
That's the perfect time for you.
Exactly. I feel like that would be a perfect day in Madrid.
for a small route, where you get to meet guitar makers and shoemakers. Also visit a flamenco dance school, the world's most famous, actually, flamenco dance school. And then we'll go to the flamenco venue, the tablao that I have chosen for the evening, depending on who's on, that weekend or that week.
And then for me, if you want to find what I'm doing, devourtours.com. Our tour, we're in a few cities in Spain, Barcelona, Seville, and others. But so you'll find that in Madrid, we're called Devour Madrid Food Tours. You can find us on either website. And, you don't have to book a tour. We have a blog on devourmadridfoodtours.com, which is full of wonderful local information of where to eat, what to explore, written by us. And so do check it out and read through and find some great tips and some local tips that are often, as I say, a little more real than what you might get in a guidebook, that may be a little out of date or a little stilted or not quite how it actually is.
Excellent. And if I'm going to take one of your tours, what is the most surprising thing I'm going to eat, and what's the most delicious thing I'm going to eat? It doesn't have to be the same tour.
Exactly. Well, I would say one of the most delicious things that we serve in Madrid on one of our tapas tours is the sizzling garlic prawns from a bar called La Casa del Abuelo. These are cooked right before your eyes. Remember, you're landlocked, but these are fresh prawns that are cooked in seconds, and they're absolutely delicious and garlicky. Very, very Madrid dish. One of the most surprising things, well, I've kind of revealed it now, but I feel like you're going to try a calamari sandwich if you take our ultimate Spanish cuisine tour. So you're going to have to really have a real Madrid experience there.
Excellent. Well, James and Yolanda, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing with us your love for Madrid.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Chris,
for talking with us.
I had a very short message this week from Wellington saying, "Hello, amateur traveler. I'm Wellington from Brazil. I'm starting my travel blog inspired by you. Thank you very much." Well, Wellington, that's great to hear. I hope it works out as well for you as it has for me. Otherwise, I'm sorry. I had some very specific feedback in a recent iTunes review by Male Commando from the USA, titled "A Weekly Gem." Listening to this podcast every week for the past several years has made working out or driving so much more enjoyable. Thanks, Chris. Some of the destinations Chris and his guests talk about I will never get to, but learning about these far-off spots is part of the enjoyment. However, many of the destinations have been on our own personal travel radar, and his show has become as useful as a GPS. Here's an example. When our family traveled to Kansas City and wanted good barbecue, we knew Chris's guest had recommended good barbecue joints. Problem solved. Great work, Chris. Thanks so much, Male Commando. And I would have to say, if I had to choose between Amateur Traveler and a GPS, I would probably go with the GPS, but I appreciate the compliment. With that, we're going to end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. Still space on that India tour. I hope you make it. I hope you can join us and join that conversation at amateurtraveler.com/trips. And thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more cathedral.